Welcome to yet another episode of the CRM MVP podcast. Today's episode is going to be kind of interesting because I will be, reviewing or revisiting some of the topics that we have discussed before. But the reason why I'm reviewing or revisiting, those topics is because over the last, few weeks, based on the project work that I've been doing or based on some of the comments that I'm reading online and even perhaps the conversation that I had with Rami and Leon and George while I was in Australia for Naked Consulting. If you haven't checked out that series, go ahead and check it out at the CRM MVP Media YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and search for CRM MVP Media, and it's called Getting Naked. So I want you guys to check that out. But the point is that I've heard, I've been noticing that lately there's a lot of situations that I'm finding myself into where I see it more as a consulting that essentially focuses on feelings more than facts. And, I think that for me, the thing that makes me effective as a solution architect is the idea behind practicing what I call fact-based consulting. And I don't know if this is something out there. I think somebody probably came up with this concept before. I call it fact-based consulting because I feel that in a lot of cases, we implement functionality that we think is a good thing, we feel is a good thing, but when you look at the facts, it doesn't really add up. So I wrote down a list of situations that just came to mind. And typically what I do is I write down a list of situations and then I select like my top 10 or whatever. You guys are used to all these episodes where I essentially pick a top 10 for whatever. In this case, I stopped writing when I hit 15. I wrote 15 things. And then when I thought about, well, maybe I should remove 5 of these or whatever, I felt like not every episode has to be a top 10. I think that all of these are equally important or unimportant. These are just, again, 15 examples where I think a lot of people lead with their emotions. They lead with their feeling. They do it because it feels right. But when you look at it, like the facts don't lie, right? The results don't lie. And I think that being kind of a realist as a solution architect or as an implementer is more important than your feelings. And at the end of the day, what we're looking for is results. We're looking to drive business as an organization by implementing Dynamics 365. And the way we feel about a specific functionality, it's kind of irrelevant because what we're looking for is results, right? Take it, for example, the first thing on the list that came to mind. Managed versus unmanaged solutions, right? We had a whole episode on this, one of our most popular episodes ever. And when you look at solutions today, even today, because I know that there were some, kind of rumors about maybe Microsoft restricting whether you can use unmanaged solutions in production environments and all of that. And that might still be the case in the future. I don't know what Microsoft will do. If I knew, I couldn't tell you because of my NDA. But because I don't know, I think that's a possibility. It could happen. I don't know. But as of now, if you look at the latest and greatest functionality when it comes to solutions, which is essentially creating Power App solutions, which, by the way, totally recommended because, well, Rami talked about this in one of our last 2-Minute Tuesdays. If you want to check that out, maybe about this week or last week, something like that. He talked about the fact that when it comes to Power App solutions, you can actually add things that you cannot add within a Dynamics 365 solution, like Canvas apps, like Flow, for example. You can add your flows into your solution and then move it from one environment to another. Environments work pretty much the same way they work in Dynamics 365 or on the CRM Online side. You have sandbox environments, you have production environments, you move solutions from one to the next. And by creating a Power App solution rather than a Dynamics 365 solution, you can actually include, as I mentioned, functionality that is just not available if you create a Dynamics 365 solution. So I'm all about that. I'm all about using the latest and greatest. However, when you create a Power App solution, you still have to make a decision whether that solution is going to be managed or unmanaged. And again, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I mean managed and unmanaged, I'll link the episode below to the managed versus unmanaged conversation so you can go and learn a little bit more about what they are and kind of what's the idea behind it. But safe to say, the Microsoft best practice is that you should use managed solutions in production environments. That's the best practice. Actually, even there, when you're using the solutions in Power Apps, it tells you unmanaged is for sandbox environments. Don't use it in production, kind of thing. But the fact is, there's virtually no benefit on using managed solutions. Doesn't matter who I talk to. It can be from Microsoft. It can be anyone, any MVP, anybody. No one is able to explain how using managed solutions provides real world advantages in real implementations. I know on paper you can uninstall them. On paper you can patch them. So if you're working with a massive solution and some little change takes place, you, instead of importing the whole thing again and overwriting everything, you can just patch it. Yes, on paper that sounds like a good idea, but in reality it doesn't really help. Now, I've had some interesting conversations since that episode was released with people who use it and who have extreme, care on their application lifecycle management and extreme discipline when it comes to their application lifecycle management, and they leverage managed solutions without running into any issues. Now, those are the extreme, just like they're extremely comfortable running that and being clean with our application lifecycle management, they're extremely rare scenarios, right? Your typical, paper, company like Dunder Mifflin out there that is using Dynamics 365, they're unable to have a team of people with the depth of knowledge and technical skill that is able to take advantage of whatever little amount of benefit you get from using managed solutions. So when it comes to managed solution, I feel that most people use managed solutions because Microsoft says it's best practice, because you're supposed to use it, right? It's kind of like I'm trying to renew my passport right now, and on the passport it says something like, most people get a passport book and a card. But why? Why do you want to pay extra to get a card, even if it's $7, which is basically nothing? Why would you get a card if your passport book works everywhere? I mean, it just sounds like it's redundant, right? And just because most people get it, and for those of you in the US that have gone through this process know what I'm talking about, it says right there on the application, most people get both. Well, I just don't think you need it. I mean, yeah, on paper it sounds like you can use your passport card to go on a cruise or something, but just take your regular passport. It's not that big of a deal or big of an advantage. That's kind of how I feel about managed solutions. I feel that because Microsoft says is the right thing to do, people do it blindly. But when you look at it in the real world, it makes no sense. Facts indicate that unmanaged solutions are a lot more predictable, a lot easier to work with, a lot easier to troubleshoot and to fix when you run into issues. And I'm not even saying if you run into issues. I'm saying when you run into issues. Everyone runs into issues. The most expert solution architect, whoever you think is the best one out there, runs into issues. And managed solutions are always harder to fix. Always. I have never had a problem where I said, I wish this was a managed solution. So we had a whole episode about this. There were 5 or 6 of us, I think, in the room talking about this stuff. And for the most part, I think we all agree that this is one of those best practices that makes no sense. So if you want to learn more about it, as I mentioned, go tune into that episode. I believe is episode 37. Number 2 on the list is workflows versus flow. I get it. Flow is the future. Flow is the, all-promising solution to all of our issues. But in reality, again, let's go into the facts. This is fact-based consulting. In reality, workflows are, if you're experienced with them, if you've been using it for years because they've been around for a long, long time, they're easier to work with. They simply are easier to work with. Not only that, they work in real time. They work in, behind the scenes. They do almost everything you can do with Flow within Dynamics 365. Now, I know that Flow can do a lot more than workflows, obviously. I've been working with Flow since it was out, essentially. I know that you can interact with non-Dynamics 365 things and do automation that workflows could dream of, right? I get that. If you're trying to do something that workflows are not capable of doing, Flow makes sense. But if you're trying to do something like, let's say you assign a lead to somebody and you want to notify them with an email that a lead has been assigned to them. To me, it makes no sense to use Flow, at least right now. And I know that maybe in the future, Microsoft will completely get rid of workflows once they figure out a way to launch flows in real time, which right now, it's kind of like when you ask is this explanation like, well, if you use PCF and blah, 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 you kind of, you end up getting with a real-time flow. No, you don't, right? Workflows do work in real time. They stop you from, moving forward if you don't satisfy the condition that the workflow is actually enforcing. So when it comes to workflows versus flow today in September of 2019, I think that facts indicate that working with workflows makes more sense. Again, for those situations where you can do it with both, with workflows and with flow. There are things you cannot do with flow, like, as I mentioned, run it in real time, like having the hundreds, maybe thousands of custom workflow steps that are available out there for you to simply import them into Dynamics 365 and take advantage of that functionality. I mean, I can name 3 MVPs that have extensive custom workflow steps out there for free, right? You have Jason Latimer, who has, like 200 different steps. You have Andrew Butenko, who has another package. You have Damien from Spain, who has also, a solution out there with a ton of different steps. Aiden Cascella, like there's just on and on and on of experts. And those are just MVPs. There are non-MVPs that have a bunch of steps out there that you can find, for free for your solution. That just does not exist in Flow. You don't have that ecosystem. I just feel that when it comes to Flow, it's the newest and shiniest thing out there. It's the thing that people want to focus the most, the Jerry Weinstocks of the world, the Eliza Benitez of the world. Like they want to focus on that because that's what Microsoft is pushing for. But that's all feeling, in my opinion. Again, if you're trying to do something that is impossible with workflows, or at least not possible easily with workflows, I think Flow is the right way to do it. You should all day long go with Flow. But the whole idea that, even if I can do it with workflows, I'm going to do it in Flow, that to me is just feeling. It's not fact-based. And I asked this question during the CRMUG Summit in Australia about, when will they get rid of workflows? It was like kind of like a Microsoft panel. And you can ask them any questions. Like you have all the product owners there. And my question was, I think it was something like, when will you get rid of workflows because there'll be riots and I want to be ready, that kind of thing. And Ben Vollmer answered my question, and, I didn't like the answer. The answer was something like, if you're still depending on workflows, you're stuck in the past. I didn't like the answer for 2 reasons. Number one, because workflows are not the past. They're still there, and there are things that you cannot do with Flow that you can do with workflows, number one. But number 2, I didn't get my answer. I really wanted to know because I want to be ready for the riots. The riots in Bellevue or whatever the riots are going to be, Area 51. I don't know what these days. What's going on with Area 51, by the way? That's another episode. Let's talk about that later. But anyway, feelings are all about Flow. I feel that most people are looking at Flow and being like, oh, that's the prettiest thing. Let's go use it. But the fact is, workflows are so solid and they work awesome and they do a bunch of stuff that Flow can do. And I'm going to keep using it until they pull the plug off on it. So that is number 2 on the list. Next on the list, real-time integrations. This is another one of those feel-good stories where every integration, for some reason, people think that should be in real time. If we, as soon as a customer pays a bill, it needs to show up in CRM. Like as soon as we track it in our ERP system, CRM needs to show it. Why? And maybe there's a reason why. Maybe you really need to know that because people are trying to buy a car in real time, and if they haven't paid their bill and now they paid it, okay, cool, now you can buy there might be situations where in real time you need to show this stuff. But for the most part, that's never the case. And I work with customers that say, as soon as we close an opportunity, an invoice has to be generated immediately. And then you do it in near real time, which means within, let's say, 5 minutes. And customers never complain. Never. Not once I've had a customer come back and be like, that was 5 minutes. That's BS. It needs to be immediate. And maybe you guys have worked with customers that are adamant about the whole real-time thing. But real-time, no matter how you put it, kills performance. kills performance. I don't care how you say it, how you slice it. Real-time anything kills performance. That's why I try to stay away from real-time workflows. Even though I love them, when I need them, I like to use them because Flow doesn't do it. But let's not go back to that. Again, we kind of beat that dead horse already. So for me, when I think of integrations, my first thought is, how often do we need to have this information transiting between the two sources or multiple sources, whatever it is, in order for us to do our job? And the answer is almost never in real time. Now, look, if you're selling something that, let's say, is very connected to exchange rates or stock prices or something like that you need to check the price of oil, you need to check it in real time because it changes multiple times a day or something like that. I get that. Go for it with real time. It's no longer a feel-good thing. It's a fact. Our business depends on this real-time information to operate. I get that. Now you're into fact-based. But the whole idea that as soon as something happens, immediately something else has to happen, that is all based on feelings. You feel that it needs to happen in real time. But the reality is, if it happens within 5 minutes or whatever, it's still going to have the same effect, right? Oh, you couldn't invoice that, you couldn't get that invoice go out at 2:55 p.m., so now it's going at 3 p.m.? Maybe for some companies it's a big deal, but for most organizations out there, it's not a big deal at all. People won't even notice that. So, and I would even push it to batch. What if it doesn't go out at 2:55 p.m., or what if it goes out at 9 p.m.? Is that going to crush the business? In a lot of cases, the answer is no. That's okay. It can go out in the middle of the night. That's cool. That way it will be on the top of their inbox in the morning. I like that. Yeah, send it at 2 in the morning. That's better, right? So again, don't get too caught up on the whole real-time integration thing. That's just a feel-good, feel-good functionality. Number 4, this one might bring some controversy. Canvas apps. The whole idea that everything is a Canvas app and every problem has to be solved with a Canvas app is just all about feeling good. It's all about those stories of the doctor that created an app for their patients, or the guy in Heathrow that Mark Smith talked to or bought him a beer or something. I don't know. Like all these stories about Canvas apps and citizen developers, and now, everyone and anyone with access to a computer will be creating Canvas apps. That's all feel good. The fact is, when we work with these apps, is they're not as easy to create and to use as you think. So the whole idea of Canvas apps to try to look like people these days, I feel that they go out of their way to try to find situations where a Canvas app could help. And I think that's just a feel-good story. I feel that fact indicates that we need to use them when we need them. And in my opinion, there are 2 situations where I think of Canvas apps. Only 2 situations where I think of a Canvas app. Number 1 is when I need an app that requires the capabilities that the phone provides. For example, QR, code reader, taking pictures, recording video, having people sign on the touch screen of the phone, things like that. A Canvas app is really good for that stuff. So if I need something like that, if I'm deploying something, let's say for a company that maybe they do catering, okay, and every time they deliver an order, they scan a QR code to essentially say this order has been delivered. Canvas app all day. That's what those are great for, okay? And then the second situation in which I use a Canvas app is if I only need somebody to perform one action, and that person will not have access to anything else in Dynamics 365 or any other application whatsoever. So if your job is to be at a conference and you're taking people's information and entering them on the system, okay, I think a Canvas app can work for that. If your job is to essentially take pictures of stuff. Like, let's say you work for an insurance company and you're an adjuster. You go to people's, houses or whatever to take pictures of damage and essentially approve or decline, or maybe just run a report or whatever. Maybe you're a realtor and you're going to houses and capturing how many bedrooms are in a house and bathrooms and square footage and take some pictures and whatever. Like, that's all you do all day. Then have at it. Canvas apps make sense. A single action, single task kind of mentality. It's what I have when it comes to Canvas apps. And even in those scenarios, with the new licensing changes, I'm leaning more towards using model-driven applications, not because they're better, but because I am way more familiar with model-driven applications. And I think most people that work with Dynamics 365 are also most familiar with model-driven applications rather than Canvas apps. So this whole charade that we're going to be creating Canvas apps left and right, and that anyone can create Canvas apps left and right, and that we can embed them into model-driven applications, and let's just create thousands and thousands of apps for everybody. Like, what are you talking about? In the real world, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't work. It never works well, at least for me. And again, Canvas apps are too new and they're improving. They're getting better and better and better. If you're listening to this episode in 2021, maybe you're thinking that I'm crazy because Canvas apps are seamless and they're used everywhere. Who knows what 2021 looks like? Maybe they don't exist anymore. I don't know. But what I'm telling you is right now, in September of 2019, Canvas apps, to use them the way most people feel like they should be using it, it's just a feel-good situation. There's no fact that this is going to really help your organization do better. All right, let's speed up a little bit here with some of these. I feel like I'm talking too much about each topic, and this episode is going to be, 2 parts. So I'm going to try to nail it all in one part. So let's see how it goes. Number 5 on the list, mobile client. The whole idea that, we need to deploy on the mobile. Like, we have to. Hey, John, do you think we should go mobile? Yeah, we should go mobile. Really? Not every company has to be mobile, okay? Just to be able to check a box that says you're mobile makes no sense unless you're actually getting value and driving business because you have this information on a mobile device. Now, if you're enhancing the functionality on the mobile device, let's say you're using relationship insights, right? And you have now cards that are constantly telling you, hey, you have to call this person, you have to send this proposal, you have to follow up because you haven't heard from this person in 5 days, whatever. If you're enhancing that functionality, if you're driving business with your mobile device, then it makes total sense. But the mobile client, and I guess we can group them together, offline mode, we need access to our data offline all the time. If you're just doing that, you're just adding complexity to somebody's workflow for no reason, right? And sometimes I'm in these projects where I feel like the solution architect or even the customer in some cases is trying to justify a mobile application or a mobile solution of some kind, So let's say they're doing, they're doing proposals or something like that. And they are asking, say, well, how often do you do proposal from your phone? And the user is like, never. I'm on my computer. I know, but you travel a lot, right? Yeah, I do travel because I'm a salesperson. I travel. Cool. So how often do you do proposals from a tablet or something like that? Never. Like, even when I travel, I do it on my laptop. Okay, but would it help if you can do it from your phone? Like, why are you fishing to check the box and feel good about the fact that your solution works in a mobile device? Not everyone needs it to work in a mobile device. Like, try to dispatch field service resources on a phone. It's not the easiest thing, right? So not everyone needs to be on a mobile client, all right? If you're going to put people on a mobile client, make it fact-based. Make it a fact that using a mobile client is going to drive business. If you can do that, go for it. Put everyone on a mobile device if that's the case. And I think that you're understanding the theme of this episode. It's all about driving business. And if you're trying to work on something that doesn't drive business, then it's just a feel-good thing. Here's another one. Lots of data, right? Lots of data is what I wrote on this one because it's when you have companies that, well, it's twofold. Number one, we want all of our data forever, right? You're doing a migration. Maybe they're using Salesforce or an old version of Dynamics CRM or Siebel or whatever. They've been using it since like 1995 or whatever. And they're saying like, oh, we want all of our data. Really? Do you really need 20-year-old leads? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe you can justify how having a 20-year-old lead is going to help your system or whatever. It's going to drive your business. But for the most part, you don't need that. So that's number one. Number one is you have people that want like all of their data for no reason. That's just to feel good because I like to see all of my data in one place. Cool. And then you have on the other side, you have can we add these 1,000 fields to the form? Because we need to capture everything. We need to see all of the data in one place, one form, everything. Really? Do you really need everything? Please explain how this 1,000 fields help drive business. Okay? So the idea that you need to see all of your data or all of your fields or all of whatever, it's irrelevant. You only need to show the information that you need to drive business, to close a sale, to deliver the products the customer bought from you, to essentially extend the relationship you have with a customer, so understanding what share of wallet you have with them so you can sell them more, what they need, identifying cross-sell scenarios. Like, have information that helps you drive the business. Everything else is just noise. It's noise. So, again, lots of data. It's on the list. Next on the list, useless charts and dashboards. And this is, again, coming a lot from business users, right? I need to see a map where all of my locations are, pins on the map. Why? How is that going to help us sell more? How is that going to help us deliver products and services? How does that help us drive business? Or do you just feel good because you can see all of your salespeople in a map? Oh, look how beautiful. Oh my God, we have so many pins in this map. How beautiful it is. Who cares? If it doesn't drive business, no one cares. Okay? So every time you get a request for a view or a chart or a dashboard that you're unable to explain how that chart or dashboard is going to help the business grow, then it's just a matter of feeling good about having the chart. It's not about facts. It's not about making the system drive business value for the company. Next one, this whole idea that everything you have to do in Dynamics, you need to think of the lowest number of clicks to accomplish anything. Oh, to create a lead, lowest number of clicks. To close an opportunity, what's the lowest number of clicks we have to put to be able to resolve a case? What is the lowest number of clicks that people have to do to create a case or resolve a case? Just forget it. Who cares about the lowest number of clicks? No one cares if it doesn't drive business. Right? Because I promise you that if you go to a salesperson and say, hey man, right now it takes you 8 clicks to close an opportunity, but what if I make it 12, but I can increase your chances of closing by 10%? If I increase your close ratio by 10%, would that be worth clicking 4 times? Right? If I add 6 clicks, but I increase the first call resolution rates by 50%, would that be worth it? Right? Those are the things that you have to think about, is having that end goal in mind. What drives the most business? And the number of clicks is irrelevant. It's just a feel-good thing. The whole idea of, I have everything in one form, and now I can just create it and click save. Awesome. How does that help the business? Oh, nothing. It just makes it easy for me. Okay, so it's a feel-good thing. But I'm all about fact-based consulting, not feeling-good-based consulting. It's not about your emotions, okay? Next, being a whiteboard consultant. I've talked about this several times before, which is doing everything the customer asks for, even if it hurts them. Just because you're a consultant, you're an expert, and you know how to do it in Dynamics, and they don't. If they ask for something that you disagree with, if they arrive to a conclusion that you disagree with, the wrong approach, the wrong technology, whatever it is, wrong timing, you should speak up. You cannot be a whiteboard consultant. That's part of that naked consulting video that we talked about. And I might record a whole podcast episode of just my thoughts on naked consulting because the videos we recorded about an hour and a half of just the 4 of us just going over them and talking about examples and whatever. But I might just go for it and do like half the time. So like 45 minutes and just explain what that is all about. So if you want to learn more about it, stay tuned. I will be recording an episode about naked consulting and what that means. But it is essentially the opposite of being a whiteboard consultant, which is a yes, ma'am, yes, sir, I'll do it. I'll do it no matter what. Hey, Gus, we should use a Canvas app for this one. What do you think? Yes, absolutely. Let's go do it. No. If it makes more sense to use Excel, you should be able to recommend Excel, whatever it is. That's just an example. So again, being a whiteboard consultant, just stay away from that. That's just feeling good. It's not really, in fact, helping the organization. Number 10 is thinking about the users instead of their customers, right? When you're configuring dynamics, again, it makes you feel good to put yourself on the shoes of a user, right? Well, if I was a salesperson, what would I like to see? What would I like the system to behave like? And I've talked about this being a myth of solution architecture, and more specifically, a myth of the user experience, the user interface. So the fact is, the most effective way to configure the user experience and to generate the best results is to think like a customer. If I was their customer, what would I like to see? Because if the customers are happy, then the company's going to be happy. Because the customers are the ones that drive business. The companies are the ones that buy the stuff the company sells. They consume the services and equipment or whatever it is the company sells. Those are the ones that need to be happy. And if you work in the public sector, instead of thinking like the person processing this application or approving benefits or whatever department you happen to be working with, whatever ministry or whatever, instead of thinking like that, think like the citizen, the person applying for it, right? What would that person like to see or, I guess, experience when they're interacting with this particular, department of government or whatever it is that you're working with? It's the same process. The more you think like a customer of your customer, the more successful you're going to be implementing solutions that drive business. And again, this is all about driving business. So again, putting yourself in the shoes of a user makes sense, but it's not as effective. It makes you feel good, but in fact, the most effective way to have an impactful Dynamics 365 solution is to put yourself in the shoes of the customers. Okay, the customers of your customer, essentially. If you're implementing it for another company, if you're implementing it for your own company, then put yourself on your customer's shoes. All right. Next, teaching people multiple ways to do something. Right? There's this whole idea that, well, if I teach them the 5 ways to create a case, that they have so many choices. They can, they can use either one they want. That's just all about feeling good. The fact is the users want to learn one way to do something and the easiest way to do it, and that's it. So teach them one way to do it. Yes, there are 5 different ways to create a case. You can convert a case from an email. You can convert an activity into a case. You can create it from within the account record or the contact record if you're using that. You can create them by emailing and using case creation rules. You can create it manually. You can click on the phone support button. I mean, there are many, many ways to create a case. Quick create, regular create. There are many ways to do it. But your users only need to know one way. If the one way is to convert emails into cases, because that's the way that support works at that company, that everybody just emails their salesperson or customer service representative and that person then creates a case, then teach them how to do it. Install the Outlook client, show them how to track and then convert into a case, and you're good to go. That's it. You don't have to teach them the other 7 ways to do it. Okay, so again, it makes you feel good that your users may know the 5 or 7 different ways to do something. But the fact is, the most effective is teach them one way to do it, and that's it. Okay? Next is having the CIO of the company as a sponsor in the implementation. This is a very, very popular one. I used to get really, really excited when the CIO of the company was a sponsor in the project because the CIO stands for Chief Information Officer. Dynamics 365 is an information solution or a business solution. So having the Chief Information Officer sponsoring this project is a good thing, right? Well, the fact is that most of the people that report to the CIO and most of the companies out there is IT people. And you know what IT people don't do? Use CRM, right? So most of the implementations that you'll do as a solution architect is going to be for salespeople or customer service representatives or, field service technicians or whatever it is. You're going to implement it for different people. They are not the IT guys. The IT guys typically support it, they maintain it, they administer it, but they don't actually use it. Now, in some companies, they do. I'm not saying every single company out there, IT people are not really users in Dynamics. But for the most part, it's non-IT people, which means they don't report to the CIO. So your line of enforcing anything, promoting user adoption and all of that, is dead, because the influence that the CIO has is mainly on the technical guys, the IT guys who are not using Dynamics. Those guys don't need any encouragement to use that system because they're not on it. So that's why you go through an exercise, which is called a sponsorship mapping exercise, to identify who is the best sponsor for your specific implementation. If you're implementing a solution for, let's say, the sales department of the office in London, you want the sales manager of the office in London to be the sponsor, or the director, or, if it's not in London, maybe it's the UK, but try to have it as close as possible to the users that are going to be in the system, right? So this whole idea of having the CIO as a sponsor being a good thing is just a myth. It's a feeling good thing, and I was guilty of that, and I hope that you can identify that early, because you will run into a lot of issues. And it's not because it's not your fault, and it's not the CIO's fault. As a Microsoft Dynamics 365 solution, emphasis in Microsoft, it sounds like it should land on the CIO's, kind of lap. So because of that, you end up with the CIO all the time, and it's good to have it because you need IT for your implementations. When you're trying to do integrations and you're trying to get resources and licenses and stuff like that, typically the CIO can make that happen. So it's good to have them. But when it comes to the actual application, you need some other sponsors. So again, whenever I get this, and I went into detail about this, I think it was in episode 10 when we talked about, change management. I make the CIO the primary sponsor. So because they were the primary sponsor, they were the original sponsor, let's just say. And then I name executive sponsors, which you can have more than one. And you will have people as executive sponsors that are people that have influence on those users, Dynamics 365 users. So think about that next time when you're working on a project where the CIO is the sponsor of the project. All right, next on the list is gamification. Gamification is another one of those that looks good on paper, but the fact is that it's very ineffective in the long term. Now, I like gamification in the short term. I think that if you're trying to clean up some data, the fact that you can do some gamification and give people prizes for, this data palooza that you're trying to run or whatever it is, that's cool. The fact that you're maybe giving people a trip to Jamaica, if they sell the most amount of revenue to brand new customers, not recurring business. If you have a contest of some sort like that, gamification is cool. You have it for 3 months, people play. There's a game going on where maybe you have teams, maybe individuals, whatever it is, and then you're tracking those results and you're having a little competition along the way. That's good. But the whole idea that you're going to implement gamification every quarter or every year or whatever it is, it doesn't work. And I remember at the CRMUG Summit a couple years ago, there was a session about success with gamification. And I wasn't doing the session. I just attended because I wanted to hear what people were doing with this. And they had 3 people on the panel. And if you're listening to this and you were on that panel, I wish I'd remember your name, but thank you for doing that session, because one of my questions was, can you tell me a little bit more about how your company's using gamification? How long have they been using it, and whether the enthusiasm for the actual gamification solution has, weighing down over time, if it's declining over time. And all 3 of them, to my surprise, just being honest with you guys, to my surprise, all 3 of them had been using gamification for like a year plus, and people were still digging it. People were still loving it, and they like to see themselves in the board or whatever. I was blown away because every time I've used gamification for anything more than 3 months, it fails miserably. Like, think about your own life and the times that you've used gamification, right? Whether it is when Foursquare came up and people were like checking in and becoming the governor or whatever of whatever place it was, or the major. I don't remember what title it was, right? You get into that and then it kind of goes away with a lot of this stuff, right? A lot of these fads kind of come out as gamification. You play for a little bit and then you're done with it. That's kind of how that works. And in Dynamics 365, in my own personal experience, the fact is that gamification has never really helped in the long term. Now, does it help initially to get a little bit of user adoption? If you have a game and people are tracking stuff, to get a little bit more of create kind of a discipline or a rhythm in which people are entering data after every call or after every opportunity or whatever it is. I've seen gamification solutions or situations where they gamify for things that didn't work. Like, let's see who tracks the most opportunities that we lost and the reason why we lost them. And the reason for that game is we really wanted to understand what we need to invest on. Maybe we need a location somewhere where we keep on losing business because we don't have presence on that state or that region or that country. Maybe we need to invest in better training for salespeople. Maybe our products are too expensive and we need to invest in something else, outsourcing the products and whatever it is. Like, we need to identify what is holding us back. And I've seen it where we've done gamification solutions for opportunities that are lost, and it works very well. And it also works well for opportunities that you win, and your typical games that you think about in terms of whoever sells the most goes to whatever sandals in the Dominican Republic or whatever. That stuff, that also works. But again, I have never seen it in the long term. If you're listening to this and you have, drop me a comment below. I want to hear more about it. I've never seen it. It's like one of those like Bigfoot. There's pictures out there and people claim they've seen it and all of that, but you've never seen one in person. That's kind of how I feel about long-term gamification success customers. All right, we're getting to the end here. I don't think this episode is going to be too much longer. Matching organizational structure to business unit. And these are, again, a couple of tips that are more about security. This whole idea that because you have 20 divisions, you should have 20 business units, that's just a feel-good thing. It looks pretty. Like, I'm looking at it in Dynamics. Oh my God, look how nice it looks. All these business units, and they have child business, oh, so cute. That's just to feel good, honestly. When you look at it from the security perspective, if you look at business unit, how they're supposed to be, which are security principles, business units are meant to segment data. They're meant to split data and keep it separate from one business unit to another. That's what they're good for. Now, in most businesses, you get Dynamics 365 because you lack clarity and you lack visibility into what other divisions are doing. That is one of the main reasons why a lot of companies get a solution like Dynamics 365. We have no clue what the guys on the West Coast are doing. We sometimes contact customers thinking they're prospects and they've been doing business with somebody else in another division. That's the kind of situation that companies like that are facing. They need clarity. We don't know when was the last time we talked to somebody. We don't know if anyone else within the company knows anybody there. When was the last time we had a project with such and such? We have no idea. We need a system that helps us do that. Perfect. If that's the case, why would you then segment your data into divisions? It makes no sense. Okay? So it's another one of those that is just a feel-good situation. I want to see my divisions on a nice tree, my organizational structure mapped in Dynamics 365, and there's no benefit from it. And actually, it's a bad thing. If you listen to episode 19, where I talk about security and more specifically performance when it comes to security, you know that by having a bunch of business units and a bunch of teams and a bunch of security roles, you slow down the system tremendously. Because the reality is that anything we do in Dynamics 365, every field we add, every record, everything we do in Dynamics 365 slows down the system. Now, obviously, it slows it down in a way that you can tell that you added a field. You can't really tell the performance decrease. But once you add 10,000 fields, you will notice the performance has been affected, right, tremendously. So again, this whole idea that you need to map your organizational structure to business units makes no sense. It's not fact-based. It's all based on feelings. Don't do it, okay? Lastly, and I think that if all of the things that I cover on the list have something in common, it's this whole idea behind investing time on functionality that just straight up doesn't drive business. Functionality that doesn't move the needle for the organization. right? And when I've talked about solution architecture, and we have several episodes about this. If you listen to every single one of our episodes, you know that I'm, big into solution architecture and talking about this. I only follow one rule when it comes to adding things to Dynamics 365 or creating Power Apps or creating a flow or anything really that will be included into a solution that I'm designing as an architect. And that is whatever you're asking for or whatever I'm asking myself for. Like, we need this entity, we need this field, me in my head building the solution. Whatever needs to be added to the solution needs to drive the business. Everything we do needs to drive the business. That is the best way to get 100% user adoption, because if everything you put in place is designed to drive business, that means that not using Dynamics will be detrimental to your performance as a salesperson, as a customer service representative, as a dispatcher. It doesn't matter what you do. If all the functionality has been put in place to make it better for the organization, better for you, to create better results, not using it will be bad for your performance. So that's how you get 100% user adoption every time, right? To be adamant about that. So anything that I left out on the items that I talked about before that doesn't drive business, okay, is another one of those feel-good stories. It's another one of those that is not fact-based, because the fact is we need to focus on things that drive business. Simple as that, right? So if you can think about something else, if you can think about, so Gus, what about XYZ? What about iframes? What about, whatever it is that you think about. If whatever you just thought doesn't drive business, then that's not fact-based, right? That's essentially outside the realm of what I call fact-based consulting. So that is essentially how I want to end it. I want to thank you so much for tuning in for this episode. And again, stay kind of on top of things, because we have this naked consulting episode coming in the future. Of course, the best way to stay on top of things when it comes to the podcast is to follow me at Gus Gonzalez 2, follow the podcast at CRM MVP Podcast, and obviously all of our episodes are posted to crmmvppodcast.com.